And this is Black Views, bringing you the Black news. And so today, my story is going to be about Officer Sicknick. They have found that suspects charged. They found two suspects they want to charge. But basically, I want you to listen to the video first, and then I'll come back and give some commentary. Basically, break down and explain to you why when white supremacy investigates white supremacy, there is no justice. Okay, and how just listen.
Two men have been charged with assaulting a Capitol police officer who later died during the January 6th insurrection. Julian Ellie Cater of Pennsylvania and George Pierre Tanios of West Virginia appeared in federal court Monday. The men are accused of spraying Officer Brian Sicknick with an unidentified chemical during the attack. Officer Sicknick was a 12-year veteran of the force. He died one day later. Authorities have yet to determine if the chemical exposure contributed to his death. CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge has been following this story for us and joins me now from Washington. Hi there, Catherine. So it has been over 2 months since the assault on the Capitol. How did law enforcement track these men down, and what more can you tell us about what happened in court Monday?
Well, the key piece of evidence, Elaine, really came to light with federal investigators within the last few weeks, and I was told it was a piece of video that was uploaded onto YouTube. It's a piece of video just sort of on the boundary of the Capitol building on the terrace, and in that video, they could see a melee, a group of men, one seen calling out for bear spray, was passed forward, and then they used it on this group of Capitol Hill police officers. I was told that the FBI was able to pull a very clean and clear image of one of the suspects, but they were at a sort of a block, if you will, because they were not able to properly identify him. I was told through my reporting here that a tip came forward. They were able to make the identification of that individual who apparently used the bear spray on the police officers, and then also the individual who provided the bear spray from a backpack. So the bottom line is that they have been working very diligently to try and identify the circumstances surrounding Brian Sicknick's death. But it was only recently that videotape came into the possession of federal investigators that allowed them to pinpoint the individuals, now the suspects, in the assault on police officers and what they believe a contributing factor was in Sicknick's death.
So, Catherine, I mean, what you're describing, this evidence on the video, sounds to me like very strong evidence. What's your sense of it based on what you've heard from these descriptions?
Well, it is strong evidence. You're correct, Elaine. And my contacts report that it was central to identifying the suspects because, unlike some video they've had from the Capitol, this was described to me as a very clean shot of the person's facial features, and then also the action, the calling for the bear spray. But the rub here is making this connection between the use of the bear spray and the death of Capitol Hill police officer Brian Sicknick. Just to back up, bear spray is a lot like pepper spray. It can really inflame your eyes, also your respiratory system. But as I understand it, the difference between the two is that bear spray comes out of the canister at an extremely high velocity, and it can blind people in some circumstances, or if they inhale it, it can cause really severe coughing and a difficulty breathing. What we don't know yet is what the autopsy shows about Brian Sicknick's death and whether the use of this material was a contributing factor. Remember, he was sprayed in that crowd, then he went back to his office and then collapsed from his injuries. So it wasn't immediate, it was some time after the event with the spray.
And so, just so I understand, Catherine, I mean, is that why it's still not clear whether anyone will be held directly responsible for Officer Sicknick's death? Because we don't know at this point what that autopsy in fact showed.
Well, that's an excellent observation, Elaine. The autopsy is very important. It is not publicly available at this time, and very little has been said about the circumstances of Brian Sicknick's death, except for that statement almost immediately after the Capitol riots that he died of injuries sustained physically encountering other individuals. He left that scene, went back to his office, and that's when he ran into trouble and collapsed. It's going to be very difficult, a federal investigator has said to me, to draw a direct line, between the two events. And I'm sure it's caught your attention that the allegations here are assaulting a federal officer with a deadly weapon. The deadly weapon in this case would be the spray. But they've been pursuing this with the working theory that it may well have been a contributing factor in Brian Sicknick's death. And I would just encourage people to really think about some of the dimensions of this. The allegation is that these were two groups very close together, the rioters and then the Capitol Hill police officers. And allegedly an individual said, "Give me the bear," they didn't say spray, they said something else, I'm not going to use that word here, and it was passed forward, and then they sprayed it on these individuals in a very close contact. And so remember, bear spray comes out of the canister at a very high velocity. In some cases it can be 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. I mean, it's like getting hit almost with a rubber bullet in that sense, and it can be extremely, extremely damaging. So
Okay, fam. So you heard it. You heard it for yourself. My question is, why is it so hard to break down the charges, to break down the technicality of the velocity of the bear spray? It's murder. I want you to witness, and I want you to pay. I hope you paid attention. Basically, as to how she articulates the whole selection process and how they came to conclusion with it. And in one part of the video, it actually looks like someone's holding a fire hydrant, if you ask me. So now, why is it just these two that's getting murder charges? Not even murder charges. It's assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon of one who is already passed. Think about that for a second. Assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon, and the man dies. You assaulted him with a deadly weapon, and then he goes home, which this reporter doesn't make sense. He's a police officer. He doesn't have an office. He went back to his office and collapsed. Apparently, he went home, collapsed, and died. In fact, if you look at the fact finding, they have so many different conclusions as to how he died. That's white supremacy for you. See, when white supremacy is investigating white supremacy, you get all kind of confusion. Well, it could have been this, it could have been that. Like, look at this guy, Julian Ellie Cater, George Pierre Daniels. These are your all-Americans right here. These are your all-Americans, white supremacists. Look at these guys, man. Their parents were goddamn foreigners here. They storming the Capitol, and nobody gets the proper charges, which tells me it must be an inside job, and it has to be high up to the point where, this happened during working hours. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like this wasn't something that happened in the middle of the night, and they tried to go in there and do some some vandalism and throw some things around and steal little items. No, this was during office hours while Congress was in session. Congress could not leave, which creates to me a hostage situation. Once you're in a hostage situation, this has to be terrorists. But in America, we won't do that. But I guarantee you, and I know for a fact, if they were black out there, they would have took their time. They done went to every person's house that was out there on that step and charged them with accessory to murder, accessory to terrorism. They would be getting their fingerprint. They would be, oh man, they would have special cages just for these black folks. Just think about it. This is white supremacy right here. No justice, man. This total disrespect for the people that was working that day. It wasn't just Capitol Hill politicians. There were actual employees in there, black people in there, and they're working. In fact, there wasn't even any police on that side. So, like I said, at the end of the day, it must be an inside job because nobody in particular really cares. I'm not hearing what I should be hearing of these charges. The charges that I'm hearing are misdemeanor charges. And black folks, these are the Democrats that you voted for, right here. They so-called know that you put them in office. They so-called know these things, but in return, you get nothing. You don't get just. You don't get justice. You don't get this kind of, slap on the wrist. Why is it that mass media saying that white extremists are attacking black people? Why aren't they saying that? There were nooses on the Capitol ground. Imagine that. I see pictures out there. You see pictures with nooses. This is what I'm saying, man. No protection for the black. They still saying the word nigga out here. Okay? They still moving in our communities. Okay? They have thousands of foreigners coming over the border every day. Listen, it's not so much about someone leaving a bad situation to live a better life. What burns me is that right here, right now, even in this city, there are people that just came over the border that have new clothes, new shoes, new hats, new 3 meals a day, and there are black people walking around with no damn shoes on their feet, no health care, no food to eat, and no one giving a hell unless they get $1 or two from a kind citizen or a kind person. But you can bring immigrants over here. They can come over here, get fully fed, get health care, get a check, get a place to freaking stay. And then everybody running around use word niggas. And then look at these people, George Pierre Tanios. This is a foreigner. Kahata. These are none of the slave names that you have. These are foreigners. And they come over here. They're your manager. They're your supervisor. They'll tell you that your people are aggressive and that you're trash and that you're beneath them. But these people come from countries that are in chaos. This is why immigrants can come here and have no problem with them beating down black people. Because in their country where they ran from, it hit them in their heads with billy clubs 24/7. Just look like you have a problem over there in them countries. They will bust you in your head. So over here, where we have rights and we're supposed to have a democracy and a Bill of Rights and we have a Constitution, we have all these things put to place, but they're not upheld for black people. But no other group is getting banged in their head. So I'm not. I don't want. I didn't want this to go farther or come off the narrative. But all these things connect. And so it was very important for me to let you see this video, and so you can actually see how inaccurate there are. Just look at the white lady. They won't say murder. She's smiling through the whole process. She's breaking down and properly articulating the velocity. But they would never do this for you, for black people. You don't get no news session where they're breaking down everything and making it the technicalities of it, where it's not really murder. We don't know if it's murder, although they used a deadly weapon. I'm out of here. Have a good one. Please like, subscribe, and love black people. Be one.